Who am I? What is time? What is love? I'm not trying to quote Hathaway. I'm talking about some of the greatest questions mankind has ever drummed up in our tiny little brains. Who am I? These are questions that have been asked since the beginning of time. What is time is a question that has happened in our brains, in the humanity's collective brain, since before time. Why are these questions so important? Why are they still so poorly answered? It's because we're looking at them differently. Who am I? What is time? What is love? These questions are more interconnected than we could ever fathom. So let's try. Who am I? Am I just a philosopher in a t-shirt? Am I just some armchair t-shirt philosopher? No. I am a failure. I am a lifetime of failures that have led up to somewhere different. I used to joke that I was too knowledgeable on nutrition to be morbidly obese. Constantly somewhere between 300 and 350 pounds on average. I knew I couldn't talk about the things I knew about nutrition because I was not doing them. I knew enough in this world to be successful in every single sector of industry. I know enough about historian to be a history professor. I know enough about the history of philosophies to be a professor of history, philosophy, and religion. I've been practicing mental health long enough to be a mental health expert for mental health experts. My brain connects the dots so well, except for my own dot to the world, that for years I knew I could have been a quantitative analysis expert for any bank, any crypto fund, any hedge fund I chose. I could connect any dot but my own. Who am I was the most important question that I didn't know how to answer. I went to some of the greatest spiritual experts in the world, and they had amazing answers that didn't work in practice. This led me into more hopelessness, more despair. Who am I? Feeling rushed against a clock that I did not invent, that I did not dictate when I began or when I am done. Who am I? Constantly, I knew that I knew more than I knew what to do with. I felt like I was one half of a whole. I had no one telling me, but everyone telling me that I needed to get married now, or that it would happen when it happened. There was no guidance. There was only confusion feigned by niceties. The places that I was looking for my other half were those in business. But my other half was a paradox that I did not know how to know. I did not know how to memorize. I did not know how to become an expert in. My other half was somewhere in love. So eventually, I did the craziest thing I could think of. I stopped trying and focused on one thing. I focused on love. I gave up any efforts to use my knowledges. That isn't even a word, but I don't care. I gave up all worldly ambitions to focus on what I needed most that could not be answered through financial gain, through career success or fulfillment. Because the problem with those things is I would have success and fulfillment, but in 3 to 6 months, I would realize it was not the fulfillment I needed at home. And I would give up and try something different. After being an expert in at least half a different fields, I decided to ask myself, why do I have such a poor relationship with love? I let go of my addiction to time, not all at once, step by step, for years, realizing I don't dictate what is fast or slow, what is rushed, what is behind, what is ahead. If I don't define those things, then they define me. If I don't understand their why, if I don't understand why things are rushed, if there is no clear answer, if I did not create it, if I cannot talk to the creator of the definitions of what is rushed, is what is behind, there is no knowing how to trust. There is only trusting blindly and hoping that you get it right through time. What did time become to me? Time became a tool. Time became an ally. Time became a friend because I learned what I thought the crazy people were crazy about. That time isn't real. Time moves differently at the shoreline than it does in the mountains. We've only recently, in our journey through time, invented mechanisms precise enough to measure this difference. What is time? May be an easier question to answer if we ask ourselves, what is music? What is math? What is space? What is math? Are numbers a tool for math, or is math a tool for numbers? What is the difference between ratios and algorithms and pi? What is the difference between common algorithms and ratios in the golden ratio? Natural reoccurrence. What is the difference between a cube and a sphere? Natural occurrence. What is the difference between a pyramid and a scutoid? Natural occurrence. Numbers exist. Math is our tool for discovering them. What is music? It seems like to what one person believes is music, you can absolutely find another that believes it's sound. Whether it's rock and roll in the 50s, whether it's Beethoven in his day before he became popular, whether it was rap music in the 80s, whether it's EDM in the early 2000s. Noise becomes music. All of it is sound. Sound exists. Our star in this solar system makes sound. Some believe it's music who understand the beauty of the sound. Music is not the symbols on sheet paper. It is not the instruments. It is not our voices. Those are all interpretations of sound, as math is interpretations of numbers. It is understanding the harmony of numbers and understanding the harmony of sound. So what is time? We may measure the amount of time it takes for the earth to spin. We may measure the time it takes for the earth to rotate around the sun. We may measure the time it takes for a meteor to make impact. We may measure the time it takes for light to get from another system to our system. We are always measuring impact. Degrees of impact that increase with urgency. This is why a meteor coming for Earth would have more urgency than the impact of the Earth going around the sun, to the point where we could want the Earth to increase its urgency and its impact of rotation around the sun. What is time but a tool as math is to numbers and sheet music is to sound? Time is a tool for gravity. Gravity is the force of impact. Gravity is just one of many ways that we have to describe impact. When in reality, gravity is a paradox to us. Gravity is not a constant. It is relative as sound is to music, as numbers are to math. Gravity on our planet is different than gravity on other planets, is different than the gravity getting closer to the sun, as gravity outside of our solar system, as gravity in dead space. There is such a paradox of gravity where it seems like what instruments are to sheet music, time is to an unknown tool that we have to measure gravity. A tool to measure the gravity in the now experienced by a human or other being of consciousness, of awareness. It would be like a relative clock, but a relative gravity watch that helps us understand our relationship with gravity. This is the tool we need. We are scratching at the surface with measuring time. Our relationship with time is broken because it's like it's like trying to have a relationship with music by only knowing how to read sheet music. It's like having a relationship with numbers by not knowing what the numbers are worth, and learning math without knowing what the numbers represent. This is where we are with what we call time. We have a missing piece. We have an illusion of an understanding, but we are not asking why. This is why reevaluating my relationship with time was not asking these questions, but doing. Realizing that time was a distraction. I believed, just like almost everyone, that time was not my ally. Some call it a distraction, some call it an enemy, some see it as the goal line, some see it as the deadline, some see it as death. Time is in so many definitions an enemy to most. So how did I become friends with time? How did I learn to use time as a tool? To use time as a tool that people say I master it when I am only practicing it? There is no mastering time. No doctor can master medicine. No mathematician can master numbers. No musician can master music. It is only a practice. Time is but a practice as well. And you don't learn by memorizing and fearing the outcomes of time. You practice it by letting go of any ideas we have of time. Because we obviously are aware that if time is our enemy, but it could be a tool, we are not aware of how to use time to our advantage. So forget everything. Let go. If you need to start again, do so. Because right now, if I were to extrapolate on my accomplishments, I have found love. I have learned to communicate what I mean beyond what I say, to get people to listen instead of arguing as why they should hear me. I have fallen in love. I have found my companion in love. I have understood more about the paradox of love, not by study or anything about memorizing data or consequences or risks or calculating probabilities, but by taking risks and doing and not caring about the time that future holds. It's realizing that everything has come together in a quantum way, not linearly, but quantumly. Realizations come after practice instead of realizations that I need to start practicing. This is apparent in both sides of the relationship. I am now not practicing one of my knowledge bases, but all of them. I now have limitless motivation and energy in ways that I used to think I was different because I didn't have the same energy and motivation to do the things I need to as everyone else. I've been through that as well. And then I realized we are all looking for the next choice to make. There is no other choice but our very next choice. Everything past that is speculation. Everything is subject to change past our immediate next choice. This ruins our idea of perfectionistic planning. This ruins our ideas of what we believe isn't perfectionistic planning. And now I can do whatever I know how to do because I have the energy and motivation from taking the risks, screwing the unknowns, and the energy comes after. This is needless to say. These are the great accomplishments that I have made. But they are wholly outnumbered by the amount of failures. As I was finding my wife, the year leading up to that, I was working on myself, my relationship with love. I realized I didn't love myself. How could anyone love me? For a year, I went on over 100 first dates. I had no more than a handful of second dates. I had dozens of rejections of second dates I wanted to go on. And then I dug deeper. Why do I have a poor relationship with love? And I did something that I had never done before. I took the time to explore ideas buried in books that I know, as somebody who is an expert in marketing, is buried under immediate information in the now, viral videos, 10-second clips, quick summaries, lists. These things weaken our attention span. So I pushed myself to relearn to read, to understand the context, to listen longer, not with just my ears, but with my eyes, with my language, with my understanding. Listen longer. Stretch my mind past its comfort point. To not just hear, but to listen, to not just see, but to observe, to not just think, but to understand. And then I was aware of my wife in my life, who was there all along, and who, when this really started to click, and I realized that my wants and needs weren't aligned, I thought that wants and needs were different. This is how I could be a 350-pound man, know exactly what I needed to do, but still have all the reasons of why I wanted certain things. We live in a world of consumerism where wants and needs are separated. This is why we are physically unhealthy. This is why we are mentally unhealthy. This is why we are spiritually unhealthy. Because there are three sectors to the human soul: the knowledge-based intelligence, the spiritual-based intelligence, and the emotional-based intelligence. Underneath the intelligence are the knowledge, the data-based knowledge, the spiritual or religious knowledge, and the emotional knowledge. The problem with knowledge is it takes wisdom to have true intelligence. Intelligence to where you not only know what to do, but you do what you know what to do. This is the practice that comes from wisdom. In leaning too much towards one way than another gets us out of sync. We lose harmony. We rely too much on the knowledge that we have memorized and gathered, and we don't take enough risks because of fear of being wrong, because of fear of getting hurt, because of fear of sinning. These are why we are limited, almost like children, to the point where some people believe that they are a child of the world, they are a child of a God. If you believe these things, you will never grow up. This is the paradoxical truth that shattered my reality. My belief in these masters that wanted me to be like unto a child didn't understand the point of a child is to question everything. This is why they ask why, to the point that adults and children alike mock this childlike curiosity to question everything, to understand, not caring about what is right or wrong, but to understand beyond that, to ask why, to the point where they don't know to get uncomfortable, and it makes those around them uncomfortable until they just say, that's just the way things are. But in their head, they're thinking, they're not wrong. Why can't I question these things? We can. This is how this understanding of how to become limitless comes in. As I was working my way to fail up to my accomplishments, to where I am now, to where I was a year ago, to where I was 2 years ago, I failed way more than I succeeded. And to many others, I was doing what was socially unacceptable, what was a sin to them, to fail my way to success. Because the goal wasn't sin. The goal wasn't the weekend. The goal wasn't vacation. The goal wasn't retirement. The goal wasn't hope after death. The goal was accomplishment now. But I realized I had to build the foundation of what could be and match up this physical reality to the unseen reality. And I could feel the impact increasing. Despite people saying, no, this will lead you down a path of crime or immorality or sin, they had very little faith. Because to them, intentions are defined by actions, when actions are not defined by intentions unless you listen long enough to understand. And I realized time and time again through this journey of understanding myself, I realized who would actually take the time to understand me and who I was trying to emulate, and they felt rejected by me no longer trying to emulate them. They felt betrayed by my choice to be different, by my choice to understand myself. And I started to realize I understood this because I was trained to not be myself. And this is why like attracted like. This is why they felt betrayed, as I had felt betrayed by others in this path on my intellectual realm. Why I felt rejected by others that I had helped. And through this overwhelming empathy for those that I had wronged and judged harshly for being too far on the paradoxical side, or whether that be on a spiritual level or on an emotional level, I am so sorry. And to those that feel betrayed by my change, I am so sorry. There is nothing I can do to guarantee your forgiveness. But that is not the goal of this. I need to be able to forgive myself for thinking that perfect and perfection are synonymous, when imperfections do not exist in the realm of perfect, or else failing up would not be a thing. We keep measuring degrees of imperfection and believe that there is some sort of absolute imperfections that we need to avoid, when through time we have found that in history there have been times when there were definitions of 7 absolute imperfections. Now there are, depending on the sect of absolute belief, there are variations of absolute imperfections, absolute wrongness, absolute badness. It's all an illusion. If everything is a degree, you can't have absolutes in those degrees, or else there would be an absolute way for everyone to be right that is all the same. Many beliefs throughout history have taught that there were professors of an absolute way to be right, that everyone will be alike, everyone will hit the same goal. Absolutism is a dangerous temptation. It leads us to believing in imperfections. Imperfections do not exist. It is much as a construct as time. It is much as a construct of sheet music is to sound. It is much of a construct as math is to numbers. It does not need to exist. Sheet music does not need to exist for sound to exist. Math does not need to exist for numbers to exist. Imperfections do not need to exist for perfect to exist. It only generates fear, hatred, and divides. It is a divisive belief, and it is time that we understand we need to start letting it go. This is why I can be at a place now where I have fulfillment, and I have gone over the past few years with less and less anxiety to a point where I have literally no anxiety, where I can experience anxieties like Daniel Kahneman talks about in Thinking Fast and Slow. Like our ancestors used to have a healthy relationship with anxiety. It is now a tool for me. It is now a tool for my awareness. It sits on the outside of me, not residing on the inside. I do not experience anxiety from within. It is now a road sign of, okay, time to question what to do next. This is how the pivot points happen. This is how time can be used as a tool, how anxiety can be used as a tool, how feelings can be used as a tool when we don't internalize them, when we externalize them in ways that look wrong. Because we've been trained to not say what we mean, so when we say what we mean, it feels mean to other people and we apologize. We need to say what we mean to understand what we mean. Just because we're surrounded by other people who don't understand their feelings, just as you may not understand your feelings, just as I did not understand my feelings. I now understand the feelings I experience by not internalizing them. I am left with my core emotions that help me guide through morality in ways that looks like relative morality to the hypocrites that are afraid of their contradictions, not knowing how to get rid of their contradictions as I did through my entire adult life until this past year. Everyone is a hypocrite. Every child that grows up is a hypocrite. Every addict that lets go of their addictions is a hypocrite. Every person who becomes an addict and said they wouldn't is a hypocrite. Hypocrisy is how we describe change. Hypocrisy is not good or bad, it is neutral. Contradiction is the evidence of negative hypocrisy. But interestingly enough, those consumed by their secret contradictions will project their contradictions onto others. I know this because I did this for over a decade. I was obviously less contradictory than others who were talking about their contradictions, which any intelligent person doesn't do. They work on their contradictions until they are gone in silence. This is not how you let go of your imperfections. This is not how you let go of your contradictions. This is not how you leave them behind, or else you have to hold on to your belief in your imperfections, in your contradictions, instead of getting them out there, letting them go. We are all contradicting ourselves in the now. But time helps us understand the context of whether or not our intentions are to do whatever it takes to let go of those contradictions, realizing that if your goal is to sin no more, you may have to be more aware of your sins than ever in order to let them go. You may have to be more aware of your wrongs than ever and share them with those in your inner circle and even those out of your outer circle, your wrongs, your sins, everything. Or else you will get used to hiding them when you are with people who don't need to know how you are not perfect. Everyone is not perfect in the way perfectionists believe. But you will find who is really rooting for you to succeed in the long run and who is Really rooting for you to fail, if even only to become more successful than you, to become smarter than you, to become more righteous than you, to become more emotional than you. These are the things where I failed my way to success in a time frame that does not compute. To still people who do not want to believe that I have been changing, there are many who will argue that I am still a failure. Because my goals and aspirations are far beyond anything I had ever prepared for in my life. So I had to start again. 3 years ago, I was driving Uber and Lyft. Within a year, I was consulting again on the knowledge that I understood. I realized through this, I was able to consult on levels that I had never let myself before, because I was starting to understand love and listening and compassion and empathy. And I realized I was making deals with people that weren't on the level that I could help them, because I was having empathy for people who had a vision, but not the means to get them from where they were to what I could provide them. I was also realizing I was helping people who would say one thing but mean another, and time made me aware of this. And realizing that the difference between somebody who has bitten off more than they can chew and somebody who's just interested in biting the world are shown through context, are shown through time. So realizing 2 years ago, I discovered that I had to find people on my level, and then I would go back and help the people when I could, when I had the resources to do so. And they would always be my allies in time, because we're all in the same place at different times. Just because that didn't work out then doesn't mean things won't work out in a future now. But the ones who showed me that they're only interested in biting, my hope goes out to them, that they wake up to the tools that I shared with them, that were shared with me. They are not my tools. They are tools that belong to the world. To understand the import of emotional intelligence. As their hopes and dreams, I carry on in the grand ways that their biting the world will only come back to bite them. These are the realizations that time does not work linearly, it works in cycles. I worked doing Uber and Lyft for a year, realizing I am meant more for this, not because I wasn't making enough. That was not the point. When I found the one that I loved and committed to them, I realized I cannot do this to support myself in a companionship with the one I love. This is a selfish escape. I am capable of more. I cannot encourage them to be capable of more in their career if I do not walk the walk. So I went back out and I did the things that I failed at before, and I failed even greater, but learned even greater mistakes than I did before I gave up and started driving for Uber and Lyft for a year. That was what I needed to focus on, what I needed more than work and money and accumulating capital that I wasted on consumeristic toys, whether they be gadgets or the desire for a home or a car, in an economy where it is much easier and much more affordable to use Uber as a customer than to own a car, to pay for insurance, to pay for the anomalies that pop up through time, to own a house. It is much, much easier to do otherwise, to live beyond the social norms. You can have your passions, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't chase money in the way that the world tells you to and also chase your passions unless those two things align. If those two things don't align, question everything. Realize that there is no wrong way to figure out how to be your personal right. And through time, I realized more and more what I needed to do. And through the failing of going back to what I knew to do to make more, I realized there was not the foundation needed for me to help and accumulate. So now I have the vision that is years ahead. I don't know how many, somewhere between 1 and 20, most likely around 7 years from now. My vision of this infrastructure that no one owns, no one controls. Centralization is limited to the personal brand, the person, the individual. This is an economy, a human governance, a religious structure for the people, by the people. It does not need a single ruler. It does not need a single leader. We are the personal brands. We do not need a collective leader. We need an infrastructure that looks out for us individually, so we can be our personal truth and don't have to navigate what some people define as sin, what some countries define as criminal, what some people define as irresponsible or unethical. We realize that logic is the ultimate definer of ethics and morality. Everything else is relative. But in a world that doesn't think that logic is any different than reason, this stems from the unawareness of not understanding what a logical fallacy is. A logical fallacy are the principles that Marcus Aurelius taught, are the principles that Jesus Christ taught, are the principles that Buddha taught, are the principles that every spiritual nature that stemmed into many religions throughout time. Logical fallacies are just the way scientists were catching up to God or Allah or Buddha or ancients. And yet it is the least understood principle of the universe we live in. We understand music and sound. We understand numbers and math. We understand half of gravity. We understand nothing, almost nothing as a whole about logical fallacies, which is echoed through every moral compass, ancient and new, and realizing it is just a collection of the best. And we can use it to check, to see what we need to change, that according to some, depending what country you live in, may be illegal or even criminal to do something logical. It may be a sin, depending what religion you're in, to do something logical. This can better lay out a framework for us to understand ourselves. And understanding ourselves is the path that I use, that many other millions, tens of millions of people around the world that I've found. Understanding yourself is the only path to understanding the world and each other, to having empathy instead of sympathy, to having compassion instead of pity. It's not to say that it's a light switch, when in reality, it's more like rewiring the entire house to hook up a light switch in a place in the house where there is no wiring, realizing that you have to wire the place where the light switch goes to the main source of power. And then finding out, once you finally have that connected, that someone has installed the light switch for you. And since you understand how it works, you're just grateful for whoever installed the light switch, and you flip it on, realizing that you could have done that yourself because you understand how, but it was done for you. And you can't really remember whether or not you installed it when you started, or if somebody came out and installed it while you were checking the power source to where the house connects to the grid. This is how awareness works. It does not matter where getting it or making it begins or ends. It's realizing that if you truly understand, you teach openly, you give knowledge openly, you don't provide unnecessary barriers to knowledge. It's realizing you try to give away your knowledge and understanding as much as possible because it is your role to innovate, not to make money by educating. Realizing that you can't give away all knowledge because some people have to invest in it. Realizing that investment isn't just monetary, and this is the hiccup we live in today, that the main investment for knowledge is time, not money. Finding the balance between time and money investments for knowledge is key. Realizing that it is our duty as understanding knowledge enough to innovate it. Realizing that in a time where people don't read books, they don't watch documentaries, which are much shorter than books, they don't watch 20-minute educational videos, you have to make 5-minute educational snippets that lead into wanting to know more. You have to know how to hack their attention in an attention economy to understand whether or not they are ready to invest time or money, and realize that if you are an innovator of knowledge, you need to learn the value of both, because those who invest in time will become allies in money. Those who invest money will become allies in your war for attention. Both are equally valuable ROI through time. Time is a tool that we have been trained to think through examples of the world, not by lectures or explanations, but by many poor lectures, many poor explanations, and through many more choices. We believe that time is a weapon, when in reality, when you pick up the tool of time, you realize that it is a shield, it is not a sword. And then you are awakened to the reality that everyone else that you thought has a sword at the top or at the bottom. Because it seems like most of the world is stuck in the middle, where the criminal's at the top or the criminal's at the bottom. Regardless of how you define criminal, through spirituality, through emotional, or through legal intelligence. The people at the top, the people at the bottom, they don't have a sword, they have a shield. And you can see that once you start picking up the tool of time. And you can see that there are no swords, there are only shields. There is the illusion of time as a weapon when it is only a means of defense. And the people at the top or the bottom are using it to defend what they believe in, and you will be blown away when you start using time as a tool as to who believes what, who is actually aware that time is a shield, and who is capitalizing on the belief that time is a weapon. Because the real moral question is who is being honest about not having any weapons when it comes to time, whether that is the extreme top or the extreme bottom. This is the power that time has for us. This is the power that a quantum future is leading us towards. This is the reason why intelligent constructs have pushed us to paradoxical conclusions. Why the war of duality between fundamental analysis and technical analysis in Wall Street has led to the innovation of quantum analysis. Quantitative analysis is the combination of fundamental and technical and everything else. It is the big picture, using the human mind at a level that cannot be taught, but must be used like a tool outside of the normal understanding of constructs of intelligence. It is realizing that good and bad, right and wrong, are in relationship with paradoxes such as truth and love and honesty and trust. These are all paradoxes. Realizing they are a paradox that exists within the dualistic relationship of risk and trust, which are, in extreme dualism, wants to believe that they have to be separated when trust and risk are in a symbiotic relationship. They're in a paradoxical relationship that works in cycles. This is how we cycle our way to success through time, realizing we need to use time as a tool. I am at the beginning of my journey. My success is greater than most people can imagine for themselves right now, but my success is also laughable to those who have taken duality to its extreme. I understand this paradox. I am not speaking to everyone. I am speaking to the people who are ready to listen, who are ready for context, who are ready to make it to the end of an hour-long video and know that they don't know everything, and know that it is not wrong for those who taught them the right way to be innovated on. It is not offensive. It is not sinful. It is not disrespectful. It is realizing that a year ago I hated my parents, but at least I was honest about it, instead of trying to constantly hide it for years. Within a few months, I let go of that hatred and I learned how to love them and understand them for the first time in my adult life. The people who were not ready for my change blamed me for not being able to imagine how somebody could hate their parents because they are suffocated by the now, because they do not live by the now. They do not live in the now. They do not live for the now. They live in fear of the future and in constant regret of the past. And they live anywhere else but the now. They live in escape of how things were, of how things could be, in distractions whenever those things are not able to supplement their experience in the now. Distractions on a screen, distractions in an activity with people that do not talk about anything worthwhile, that do not talk about their life that they do not understand. These are the lives we live, coping through life. Instead of trying to understand life, I speak to the people who are able to listen, who are able to feel hope through this and not agitation, frustration, righteous indignation. My people are many, and the ones who are ready to listen are few. But time is on my side. Oh, yes, it is.
I want a renaissance to shine a light, be the change we want, set things right. We've been waiting in the dark for so long. Oh, an awakening